you and your partner individually seeking God, and as you seek God, you actually get closer to each other.
We have to like sit back and kind of like humble ourselves. Like we expect so much of like the other person that we're wanting to date. We have this checklist for them, but like, what are you doing?
Ooh.
Like you're not really in your Bible like you want your man to be, but like
Come
like I
on.
mean we're being real, right?
Give it to him
Like
straight.
I want a man of God, whatever. Like you need to get yourself right first. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Equally Yoked
Podcast.
So today we'll be talking about dating for purpose, not potential.
And to kick us right off, I got a question.
All right, I'm ready to answer.
So I know, actually, let me ask a question first.
Right, that was not going into a question.
So for you,
Yep.
when you were looking for your,
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking for your partner
Yeah.
to, future husband.
Wait, so was I looking before I met God or after I not met but started to know God?
I guess you can go into that.
Okay, keep going with your question because I
So
cut you off.
I was gonna say, when you were, you know, in that pursuit of finding somebody, like what is something that you're looking for? And I guess let's say this:
Mm-hmm.
when you were looking in the sense of potential, what were you looking at, and then what was the switch when you started looking for the purpose?
Whew. Potential was all about the physical, the outside, and just a little dabble of, the inside.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want somebody kind, want somebody who's going to be loving, the basic, the bare minimum. But for me, it was all about the height. That was like one of the top ones because if y'all don't already know, I am 6'3". So like going through that, like the dating process, I was like, I have to find a man who's taller than me. Like that was just my main goal. I taller than me, of course, looks good, just the basic physical checkoffs. And then I was like, and nice to me, basic bare minimum stuff. But after I realized I went like talked to people that was on that checklist of mine, I was like, something ain't right here. This is not for me. I said, let me get rid of this list that I had because what I like had for me, this is not working out. So let me hit up God and be like, what man, is the like right man for me? And so after several conversations, I finally realized and I stopped worrying too much about the physical, but just more about how that person is, how that person's heart is, and like how they were internally rather than the outside. And let's go on. Like when I met you, like obviously, like he's shorter than me, but at that time, y'all, you're gonna laugh at me when I say this, but I was really thinking we were eye to eye.
LOL.
But that's how I wasn't like focused on the physical, like just the way like you would like talk to me, the way that you were like his drive and like with his work, just like you, like the inside, like his kindness, how he, cared for me, his communication skills, immaculate. But yeah, I wasn't worried about the outside. And so that's how like my, perspective of potential and purpose kind of swithed.
Yeah. Everything just built up so much that I feel like I feel like God did something new for you And I feel like the reason why you thought we was eye to eye is I feel like God just was operating in that way.
He really was, because I was just like, whew, I was not like, when I mean to tell y'all, I was the only physical thing. I'm not gonna sit here and lie, because there was some things that I saw physically. Look at those pretty teeth right there. That's one of the things that I like. First, I was like, he has immaculate teeth. But other than that, yeah, I was just whoop, blind.
Yeah. Go deeper though. I and the reason why I say a little deeper is because I know me personally when we
Hmm.
met, like I wasn't really, I don't know if I feel like I was different from what you were looking for in
Yeah,
some aspects, but I don't know if I was completely that, I don't feel like we was completely equally yoked
yeah.
in that sense. And the reason why I bring this up is because I know there's a lot of men and women that are going to watch this,
Hmm.
and their biggest thing is they want to find a woman of God, they want to find a man of God.
Hmm.
And I wasn't a man of God initially,
Hmm.
right? At least not to the standard that I am now.
Yeah.
Because I was somebody who knew of God and I knew that he had a calling for my life,
Hmm.
but I was open to everything,
Yeah.
right? Like I said before, like in our first episode. And so, like, me personally, I wouldn't have considered myself as a man of God. I wouldn't
Hmm.
have considered myself as somebody. I would speak about the good things that the Lord has done, but I didn't know the God for myself really,
Yeah.
right? So, like, in that sense, what would you say to somebody else who may feel like they have like God has brought this person into their life, but they're not necessarily following God for real. And especially as a in a take the place of a woman in that sense of like wanting someone to lead them to Christ, right?
Hmm.
Or to be further in their walk with Christ than they are. And in that sense, like our beginning was very the opposite.
Yeah, and going off of that, because I had that same thought process, like, I was like, he should be leading me. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be like vice versa. And so that's like one of the things that I really had to pray on. And I've talked to you about this before, because there's been some, like, in the very beginning of us, like, dating or whatever, there was times where I'm like, all right, he's supposed to be leading me. Like, I want him to like really know God. I'm like, and I prayed to God. I was like, if this man is really not supposed to be for me, then just like let him go. As much as I loved him, well, still love you, obviously. But I really had to make those tough prayers. But there's always something like inside me, which I told you this before, like I knew that you had it in you.
Hmm.
It's just the timing wasn't the time when I had met you. But like I truly felt that, like, just over the conversations that we would have, that you would, get closer to God at some point.
Hmm.
Now, you know, through conversations and as time was passing, I was like, all right, like it was starting to be like with my time. I was like, all right, when is when is this gonna shift, God? Like, when is this gonna happen? Because like right now I'm like having mixed feelings. And I'm like, is this really supposed to be the man that I'm supposed to be with? Because like you say before, the man's supposed to lead. But I just really had to put my faith in God and continuously pray about it. And I will never forget the day like that you really started being intentional about your walk with God. And that was the best day ever to me.
Yeah. And so what's something that you would tell somebody that's like, and it's because the real thing is like I want you to talk about your experience, but I want you to kind of help somebody else that
Yeah.
may be going through that same situation,
Hmm.
right? Or their own version of it. Like, well, what would you tell that person?
I mean, I feel like for me, like I can't sit here and write down the answers that would be like, oh, this is what you have to do.
Yeah,
Give it to God.
there you go.
Like he will show you who is supposed to be like for you, who is not supposed to be for you. So pray on it.
Hmm.
Like ask God, have those tough prayers, and he will show you. He will show you who is supposed to be in your life, who's not supposed to be. And Like things will happen within your relationship. There will be signs. Like he will send you so many different signs that will let you know if that person is for you and if they're not for you.
What was the signs that he showed you?
Like that you were for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can start with just the beginning of like how we met and stuff like that. But let's just go like in to the part where, you know, you switched, like not switched, you started being like with your having your journey, being closer with God. But going back, like I was saying, there was a time where I had, made that prayer. I was like, Lord, is he really for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's little things that I would do to like I would have like, and I don't know if you noticed this, you probably did, but there would be some times where we'd be on FaceTime and like I would be watching like a sermon or whatever, and I would like put it up a little high, hoping like that he would like listen to it as well. And then I would just say like little things here and there about the Bible. But when was really like I started being more intentional about it, I was like, all right, let's start sending a verse a day. And with that, I was like, okay, let's see what his response will be. And if his response is not, because that was like really my last like kind of subtle like try or whatever.
Okay.
And I was like, if he doesn't respond positive to this, then this might be my time to skedaddle
Yeah.
type thing. But we started doing that, and
Yeah. I feel like that was like it's like parts of the Bible where they're always like, um, where it's like a prophecy almost, and they
yeah.
prophesy something and like they speak it into fruition, and it's kind of like because I know I'm like reading like First Samuel right now,
Uh-huh.
and it just popped into my mind, but it happens like a lot anyway, where it talks about like they'd be like, this will be one of the signs if you know if we go here and this happens and this we'll know that this was from God or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like kind of like that's what you were doing
Mm-hmm.
in that sense of like if I send this verse of the day and we like and he doesn't respond well to it, then I know God is telling me that this isn't the person for me. But if he does and we continuously do this, then I can know that this is someone that God is potentially leading me to be with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's like something that just like popped into my mind. But I feel like you kind of gave some good advice on the sense of like seeking God's guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing for anyone when you're no longer just dating to date, right?
Yeah.
But you're like dating for marriage, you're dating for a real covenant, a real union, something that like is divine,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like the biggest thing is that God has to be your first response, not your last resort. You have to welcome God into your relationship early, and I don't even mean your relationship with the other person. I mean, as you're stepping into like seeking someone else, asking God be that, to be your guide, asking God to separate, separate everything that you thought you wanted from the things that you know that God has called and said that you needed, right? And to be able to say, okay, I used to like this, I used to seek this, and it has not worked out for me, God. Lord, I ask that you just separate and just move all those people to the side and just show me with clarity who you were seeking or who, what I mean, who do you want me to pursue?
Yeah.
Right? Who is the person that you're calling me into my life? Show me that kind of person. Show me who you want. It was something that I said to God. I prayed to God that I was asking. I didn't have a specific what I wanted. It was more so just I knew that what I was doing and who I was with wasn't bringing me peace. And that was the main thing. I was like, I have to protect my peace. I need someone who just has good energy, and I know at the end of the day that I had peace because the last person that I was with, like in a serious like relationship with, I was having heart palpitations. Like, there was no real trust in the relationship. There was that whole, I gotta check your phone, that
Yeah.
whole thing. And it was just like, it was like a toxic relationship, and it was just no peace. And I was in it for like 4 or 5 years. And it's just like, you get to the point where you're just so drained that you don't even want to get into a real relationship anymore. Or like, you can have trauma from that kind of stuff. Now, I didn't allow that to happen for me. I just realized that, like, I was just failing the test that God was giving me. I realized that well, not even the fact that you're failing, you just have to learn through it, right? And to the point where it's like, I didn't realize that this was a test. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the reason why I'm attracting all these people is because if anything is going to change, like, before anything can change, you have to. Right? If you want something to change, you have to make a change. And I wasn't making that change. So I just kept getting the same thing that I kept seeking. Right? It wasn't until I started seeking something else that once I made that change, then things begin to change.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the difference too. When you make that change from seeking the potential that this person needs to look like this, and this, and it's, don't get me wrong, God may give you that person,
Yeah.
right? To the T. They might have the height, they might have the whatever, they might have the whatever, everything that you were seeking, and still be a person to God. And that may work for you, right? Everybody's different. I just feel like it just shows he's gonna show up in a way that once the thing happens, you can't say anything but, oh, that was God. Right? Like, he's going to, if you are so focused and so like intentional on it being this certain way, God's going to show you how he's going to let you get what you want just so he can show you that that's not what you needed.
Yeah.
And then he's going to show you something that might be completely, what you would shut down. And then he's going to show it in such a different light that you won't have, like, it's going to be a no-brainer. And you be like, God, like, I didn't know that I wanted that. But now that I see that, I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. You snap. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing that I feel like we have to be open to what God is giving us, right? Be open to everything that God is trying to pour into us, because God knows what he has for you. And if you just allow God to operate in your life, you will quickly see that, like, there's some places that only God can take you,
Yeah.
and there's some people that only God can put in your life.
So let me ask this, because I know you were talking about how you're wanting to, break that cycle of like being like in toxic relationships like that. So when you knew you were gonna like stop looking for that, were you looking for were you seeking a woman of God? What were you actually seeking? Yeah.
That's tough. I can't necessarily remember if I was seeking a woman of God in the sense of, like, I never been with a woman of God in the sense of like a woman of God.
Yeah.
The only woman of God I really truly knew was like my grandmother and my mom. And so, like, I never required someone to be that. You know what I mean? I never required, like, because I wasn't doing it. So how can I make that a requirement of somebody else? Right? Like, I wasn't in my word. I wasn't reading the Bible. So I'm not going to expect the girl that I'm with to have to read the Bible too. I wasn't going to church or praying, consistently, or even having a real relationship with God. So how can I expect someone that I'm with to have that too? So I can't necessarily say that I was seeking a woman of God in that sense, but I was just seeking a woman of peace.
So that was like the purpose.
Yeah, so
Peace.
yeah, like, I will say this: I was seeking fruits,
Yeah.
right? Fruits of the spirit in the woman. I just didn't even know what the fruits were, right? But when I look at what the fruits were, I was looking for that inside, but I just didn't even know that that's where God was, like, leading me towards.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like, because just going off that, we were saying, like, I, well, talking about you, like, I wasn't, like, reading the Bible and stuff like that. So how can I expect the other person in the relationship to? I think that's sometimes where we have to like sit back and kind of like humble ourselves. Like we expect so much of like the other person that we're wanting to date. We have this checklist for them, but like, what are you doing?
Ooh,
Like you're not really in your Bible like you want your man to be, but like
come
like I
on,
mean we're being real, right?
give it to him
Like
straight.
I want a man of God, whatever. Like you need to get yourself right first. And
Mm,
I think that's what we tend to forget about. And I mean, I forgot about that. Like I was like, oh, I need a man of God. He needs to do this, do that. But at the same time, I was just going about my days, not getting myself right,
mm,
not seeking God, and like just keeping, you know, like just being a better version of like me, like just getting myself right.
yeah.
And so that's when I really had to sit back and I had to change that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if I want to get out of this cycle, because like the enemy knows what you like, what you seek out, and he'll be sure to keep you in that same cycle. Like he knows how to keep you in. So if you are truly wanting to like find somebody that, a man of God, woman of God, whatever it may be, you need to really be intentional about getting yourself right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had to realize, and I had to get myself right so I can get out of those cycles.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of that's the whole point of being equally yoked too.
Hmm.
It's like it's not about like it's less about you and the partner and more about you and your partner individually seeking God, and as
Hmm.
you seek God, you actually get closer to each other, right?
Yeah.
That's mainly what it's about. And so like I feel like that's the thing that like also was important for our relationship. Um was the fact that like once I started seeking God, like I felt like it was like a motivation for like our relationship as a whole to be
Hmm.
seeking God on a consistent basis, because I feel like there was like no hold up anymore, right? Um, because once I started seeking God and we started doing those Bible readings and verses of the days and stuff like that, I feel like you just started reading the Bible way more. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like I feel like you were reading the Bible, but then you started like wanting to like read the whole Bible, and then you started wanting to actually not just read the Bible, but know the Bible, understand the Bible, annotate the Bible, take notes, process it so that you can start not just reading the word, but actually living it too.
Hmm.
And in that same sense, I was like so smitten with the word of God, and I realized how powerful the word was once I actually read it for real.
Yeah.
And I would say this, like the time I was like reading the word, I was so young that like it never really it never I never meditated on it for real.
Hmm.
Right. And it's because when I was young, like you can go through hard things when you're young, but at the same time, you really don't you even when you go through hard things and hardships, like in your youth, and I won't say this for everybody, but I would say for like just me, I'll keep it personal. For me personally, I went through hard things as a child, but you don't really know any other life
Hmm.
than those hard things. But when you're an adult and you've experienced not hard things and then hard, times and stuff
Yeah.
like that, now you're like, oh my gosh, like I gotta seek the Lord, or you build that relationship with God. And so like I didn't know any other type of life than when I was living. And I had a pretty good upbringing anyway. But when and I say this, when you're younger and you see them, like you see like older folks in the church like crying,
Hmm.
praise break,
Yeah, like these
dancing,
people crazy.
running around the church, and you exactly, you look at them as crazy, and it's just because you don't understand what they're
Yeah, you
going through.
haven't you haven't went through
You
anything.
haven't went through nothing to the point where it's fortified your faith that way,
Hmm.
right? So you're just there because, you know what I'm saying, because your parents have brought you there,
Yeah.
which is still important,
Hmm.
but at the same sense, in the same sense, you haven't been through anything to realize how good God is,
Hmm.
right? And so I say that to say, like, once I got to the point of like reading the Bible and start seeing how good the word was, seeing how good and how God is operating in our life, I was like, I have to share this. I
Yeah.
can't just keep this to myself.
Mm.
God is so good. And it wasn't even, I didn't even get to the part of the Gospels at the time where I was like, I need to share this, where I realized that that's what Jesus wants us to do, to
Mm.
share the good news, right? To love thy neighbor. And if you really want to love someone else, you have to be willing. And I feel like that's part of it, you know, you have to be willing to spread the gospel
Mhm.
and want them to be saved just as much as you want your own self to be saved. And I got to that point, and then that's when I was like on fire for God.
Yeah.
Like I was like every
And
day.
it was so awesome to see y'all.
Yeah,
Like
I was
it was so awesome.
on fire for God. And so for me, that was just like the big turning point was just once I opened up the book and actually read the word.
But yeah, like I mean that's how I was too because like you said before, like with reading the Bible, like I tried to read like the whole Bible, like so I was like three different times, but I it wasn't really intentional. It was more just like checking off a box, like just to say that I read the entire Bible. Like I'd be reading a whole book and I wouldn't even you could like you would ask me, I wouldn't couldn't even tell you what it was really about because I
Mm-hmm.
was just reading to read.
Mm-hmm.
But once I like changed my perspective and like started being intentional and really reading like and I like said like okay I really want to read the entire like Bible for real and like take notes and start really learning and first off my eyes opened to so many things and I just got I don't want to say addicted to reading because that's not really the right word but I guess we can say like on fire
Mm-hmm.
and like one of the like things that was like he was so helpful like for me because like some of the things that like I had trouble like interpreting and so he like would read too because in the beginning we started like reading together and then like he would start explaining things more in depth like with stuff that I would struggle with so that was very helpful as well but then, like, of course, that's when we broke off and we started like reading on our own,
Mm-hmm.
which is really how it really should be, honestly. But yeah, I mean, he helped me a lot with, just understanding and throughout my process of reading as well.
Yeah. So for the purpose of like helping them get, I think, trying to figure out how I want to say this, but let's just say like this for like the purpose of them, let's say, let's create two scenarios,
Mm.
right? So one is a a single person
Yeah.
and they're trying to find their kingdom partner,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do you, and then after that, I'll answer what I think too. What do you think is something that they should be, you know, looking for in a person in terms of purpose, not potential?
I mean, I feel like you should be able to look at somebody and know that they have God in their life. Like if you go to someone's, I guess you would say like Instagram or whatever it might be, like you have a conversation with this person and you can tell that like God is not
Yeah.
like in their life
Sure.
at all, then
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that's when you should like, all right, let's go to something else type thing.
Uh-huh. Like God, they say God in a caption, but they not living it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or in a bio.
exact or on
Or
their
they
arm.
arm. For sure. For sure. There's a lot of lukewarmness.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I seen something online and it said that it's sad that the only time somebody opens up the Bible is to get a tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
I think that is some good advice. Is the presence of God in their life,
Yeah, you said it right there.
right? Is the presence of God in their life? Are they a personification of the Spirit of the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not to say that they're perfect. It's not to say that they're even far in their walk with God. But can you see the glimpse of God on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it? It is not even to say, and I think what I do want to do is I do want to kind of help them understand defining what purpose and potential is. And it's not to say that when you're looking for a purpose that this person already has to be there,
Yeah.
right? It's more so to say that because there's still potential in growing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's more to say this. When we say potential, though, we're mainly focused on what you think that that potential is supposed to be
Yeah.
versus what God has said their purpose is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like when I say potential, I'm saying that I have this checklist of what this woman's supposed to be. She's supposed to be this tall. She's supposed to look like this. She's supposed to have this. All these other things in order. Does this person potentially feel that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Versus when I say, God, whatever you allow into my life, I'm gonna know that when I see that person, it's because you placed them in my life on purpose,
Yeah.
right? And so like that's kind of how we want y'all to interpret the purpose and the potential. Because I had purpose, but it took you had to see the potential in me for me to even get to that point, for
Mm-hmm.
you to be willing to even take the time to allow me to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I feel like we probably were together for like at least, I don't know if it was like a year or so before
Maybe.
I think I started I think
Maybe a little less than 8.
probably like 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
It took me like, but that's a long time.
It is.
That's a long time for somebody to be like, all right, is this man gonna find God? That's a long time, right? And so I think in that sense though, like she said, if you now take it this, now you're a single person and that's what we're saying. Can you see the presence of God in someone's life? Now it's a couple, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a brother of the Lord or a sister of the Lord, and they're watching this. What do you tell them if they're in a relationship similar to ours in the
Like
beginning?
in the beginning,
Yeah.
continue to pray on it because, I mean, like I said before, God will let you know if they're supposed to be in your life or not. So be intentional about your prayers. Have open, vulnerable, transparent conversations with that person. And if they're not supposed to be with you, God will remove them.
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely would agree. Definitely pray. Definitely seek wise counsel
Mm-hmm.
and seek God. Like I said, God needs to be your first response, not the last resort.
Mm-hmm.
And your prayers can't look like make this person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The prayers have to be very intentional in accepting and allowing God's will to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the most important key of it all is that the Lord's will be done because if the Lord ordains it and the if the Lord ordains it, then he will sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If it's in the Lord's will, he will sustain it. If your relationship is in turmoil, it feels toxic. And I'm speaking from experience. If it's in turmoil, it feels toxic. You don't have peace. It's literally not what the representation of love is.
Yeah.
You know that that is not God's will for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It will be very clear that if, and I say this because I can speak on both sides of being in a toxic relationship and then being in a more godly, divine relationship where I don't ever get to this point where I feel like there's lack of trust. I don't get to the point where I lose my peace. I don't get to the point where I feel like I need to grab her phone and check her phone. Like we don't even do that,
No.
right? There is just a complete open communication. If I do feel like something is
Mm-hmm.
with like struggling or like something's happening, I feel it. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel it and I'm like, that's how I know that like it's not just me, but it's like God has put her into my life on purpose because I feel the connection. And when she's not where she needs to be in our relationship, the Lord and the Spirit lets me feel that. And then I'm like, when she says that I have good communication, it's not because I'm just great at communication. It's because the Lord has put this on me because he's put you in my life on purpose. And so I feel when something's off. And then I can say, okay, I know something's off. You don't have to tell me that something's off. I can already feel it. I can see it. Right. And because I know what our relationship feels like when we're good. So then I'm able to ask her and then have her communicate what the issue may be. And I'm saying that from the opposite of the spectrum. When I was in a toxic relationship, I would wake up every day, and there was a point in at that time I would wake up and I would just dread waking up simply because I knew that there was going to be another problem today that I was going to have to resolve. Via if it was my own mistake or something that somebody else told her and she felt this kind of way, and now she needs confirmation, or she needs validation, or even what's that one word? I always forget it.
Confirmation, validation.
It's like it's usually what people want after the relationship is over.
Oh, I know exactly what you,
Y'all know what I'm talking about.
yeah, it's gonna come to me.
But yeah, and so I was like, I know that
Closure?
Closure, yes. Closure on situations and stuff like that. And I'd be like, oh man, I felt so drained. I felt so stressed out and everything like that. And it was just not a relationship that anybody should have to go through, because it's not of love.
Yeah.
Right? You may have love for that person, but but your relationship isn't of love. It isn't what the Bible says that love is. Right? That relationship was completely the opposite. And I felt that. I felt that in my spirit. I felt that there was a lack of peace. And so once I got out of that relationship and again, our relationship came forth, I got to see what that really was. And then it was no doubt in my mind that I was like, oh, this isn't just because of her, but it's because this was divine intervention, right? Like everything has come forth on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What advice would you give someone who is, seeking out a man or woman of God, but like they feel like it's never happening? Like, let me make this simple. Like they've been single they've been in their single season for a while.
Yeah.
And they feel like it's never going to happen. What advice would you give that person?
I would say stay steadfast in the Lord. Keep the faith. That's the biggest thing. Also understand too, like Apostle Paul says, that marriage isn't for everybody. And I'm not saying that to be like you ain't never gonna find nobody. I'm saying that more in the sense of you have to understand what God is calling upon your life. And like I said, the Lord's will be done.
Yeah.
And there may be some things that God, I think too, it's like you have to understand this. Imagine if you switch your perspective into serving an abundant God that cares for you so much that he can't just give you anybody.
Yeah.
You're so special to God that just anybody won't do.
Yeah, he's out there making that person right for you right now.
Exactly. Like the person the person that's going to be your kingdom partner in Christ is being reformed, is being renewed, is going through the fire, is being fortified. So when that person and you do come together, that you're going to be one with God. It's deeper than just I can't find nobody.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm finding people, but they just not of God. But it's more so of understanding. Well, I will say this. Sometimes, and I never would tell anybody to settle, because we don't serve a God of settlement. Right? We don't serve a God who settles. That's just not the God we serve. We serve an abundant God. Right? But what I would say is there are some things that sometimes you are blocking your own blessings. We can get in our own way.
I almost did.
Right? We can get in our own way because it doesn't look like what we think it should.
Yeah.
And it's because we're going there operating off of what we believe. We're going out there operating off of what we understand.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine this. Imagine if you didn't have to go on what is that, John? Christian mingle,
Yeah.
right? Imagine if you didn't have to go on Hinge, Tinder, whatever the
Yeah,
other
all
things they
those
got,
apps.
all that stuff. Imagine if you didn't have to go and seek your partner on there, but you allow God to operate. You just made way. Like I said before, a lot of times we don't give God enough space to operate in our lives. And we wonder why nothing's happening. Because you need to move out the way.
Yeah.
If you would just move out the way, get your behind and sit down, be still, know that the Lord is our God.
Stop asking about it every single day. Like,
Right.
he knows.
Let God work.
Right.
If you would just let God cook for you, you will see that He is going to bring forth such an amazing bride or such an amazing husband for you. And if you would just allow that thing to happen,
Yeah.
if you would just get out of your own way, you will just be able to make room so that God can make one.
Yeah. And believe me, when we say this, we're not trying to say that it's going to be easy, because it's not. Because
Yeah.
I've been in that position where I'm like, oh, I'm never going to find like a good man. Like, oh, I'm probably going to be single my entire life. But that was because like I was in the position where I wasn't letting God work. I was, every day, Lord, I just pray that this man, like I'm going to a basketball game. Lord, I pray that this man will be here. Like, just being impatient.
Yeah.
And I just had to sit back and like throw away like the my expectations that I had for the other person, or just whatever it may be. Like, just stop thinking about it every single day, because that's what I was doing. I was like making the thought of finding a husband my idol. Like, I started putting that above everything else, and I had to let all that stuff go. Like, just let it go and let God work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say this to that. Impatience is just a result of lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
If you're impatient in it, it's because you don't believe that it will happen.
Yeah.
Like you're starting to doubt that because I prayed for it yesterday and it didn't come today. I'm starting to doubt that my package is going to be delivered, right? And it's understanding that a blessing too soon isn't a blessing at all. You may not be ready for what God has brought forward, right? And like I said earlier in a different podcast, I think, but we talk about the fact that the blessing is not going to happen where you are. It's the blessing is going to happen where you're going, right? God is leading you. And as the guide, because he's our shepherd, we are his sheep. As he's leading us, we'll see that he's going to lead us to what Psalm talks about, where it talks about he's going to lead us. What does it talk about?
Into green pastures.
Green pastures, yes, and by still waters,
Yeah.
right? And we have to understand that God is going to lead us to abundance. That's what it's saying. It's going to lead us to abundance, and it's going to lead us to exactly what we need. We just have to be willing to submit, surrender, and shut up. That's what it is. Submit, surrender, and shut up, and just be willing to seek Him, right? Because at the end of the day, like we said, being equally yoked has nothing to do with us. It has all to do with being willing to pursue and seek God. And as we get here, because it's really a divine triangle, and it's like, yes, it's me, and then it's her. Well, I guess it can be her, and then me, and then we seek God. And as we're seeking God at the top, because He has to be on top. He has to be our God, our King. He has to be everything for us, above all else. And as we seek Him, we actually come closer together, right? And that has to literally be the foundation in what our relationship is built upon, right? Because He is the rock that we stand.
Yeah.
So if we want our relationship, or if we want to keep growing, that's how we grow, and that's how we get closer together. If we're having problems, I need to be praying. If we're having problems, I need to be reading. What does God talk about? What is the word telling me? What is all these things that I can be a better man, that I can better communicate? And through that, we will grow closer together, right? Maybe I just got to show more grace. Maybe I just have to be more patient. Maybe I just have to show more kindness. Maybe I just need to show more love, because a lot of times we'll give all these things to other people who have not even earned it, right? Or other people that's outside, because there's something that they can give us, but we mistreat the people that really deserve all of the love, the kindness, and affection that we should be giving them.
I mean, whew, you blew me away with that.
and I say all that to say, though, there is just a lot of misconception
Yeah.
to this dating sense
Mm-hmm.
of things, because dating is still relatively new, right? It doesn't even talk about it biblically,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we don't even really get the same, like, okay, I understand this about disobedience. I understand this, blah, 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 blah. The Bible doesn't even talk about dating, right? And so when we think about it for ourselves, we have to be able to discern that regardless, God wants the best for us. It's usually us that gets in the way of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we just get out of the way and we let God operate and we just submit to God's will. He will bring forth that person, and a person may not be perfect, but that person will be brought into your life on purpose, right? And a lot of times I realize this. I have like what she's helping with, because she talked about some of the things I helped her with. Some of the things that she's helping with is that I used to deal with a lack of patience, and I dealt with, honestly, like I wasn't the I still struggle with this a little bit. I feel like on both sides, way better. Right? God has helped me so much on the
Mm-hmm.
patience side, because you just have to be willing to have faith. And a lot of times faith is fortified in the waiting. But I also realized, like, I wasn't always the most kind person, right? I didn't grow up very in a very kind environment. And so I didn't know how to show a lot of kindness in all aspects of our relationship
Mm-hmm.
too. And the relationship that I was coming from before, like, we weren't very kind to each other either.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met her, I realized that she was so sweet, she was so kind, so gentle, so warm. The complete opposite of what I used to be attracted to. I used to like very and so to be on the complete opposite spectrum, I had to realize that God was trying to make me a more kinder man,
Mm-hmm.
right? A more gentle and a more affectionate and sympathetic man. So that, because I didn't know the calling, but in the end, you realize that, oh, if God is going to lead you to something bigger than you ever expected. I didn't know I was going to be making this podcast speaking to people about God, because I didn't know it for myself, but
Mm-hmm.
He did. And He knew that I had to be more kind. I had to, a lot of times, like I said, the blessing is going to lead you forward in the
Yeah.
same thing. So, like, when He brought her into my life, it was to make me something new that I wasn't before. And so she's definitely helped me with that aspect, and just expose that thing, because I didn't know that I wasn't kind
Mm-hmm.
before. Because you never have to be super kind to your friends in that same
Yeah.
sense, right? And super loving and super patient. And so once I met her, I was like, oh, this is different,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't be rude
Yeah.
casually, because it's not the same with her. So that's just something that you helped me out with, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
And it's funny that you say that because when we first met, like it was like a breath of fresh air for me because I'm like, oh, finally somebody who's so like kind, who's
Yeah.
caring. Like he wouldn't like speak to me like in a rude way, like where in like past, relationships where like somebody would, or I don't know, just like I just had peace, like you said before, like so it's funny that you brought that up because like it was like I was on the other side.
Yeah.
So like I would have never thought like that was something that you like struggled with. Now when it comes to that patience,
Yeah.
oh, I knew about that one.
Well, it was easy for me to kind of switch early on with that.
Yeah.
Just the way that you spoke,
Hmm.
right? And the way that you communicated, I realized it was very different.
Yeah.
And then, like, you
You
did
talking about kindness or patience?
kindness.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I got to make that switch early, because I had to communicate in a way that she's going to receive it well.
Hmm.
And, like, even the fact that you never cursed. And
Yeah.
I had to work on that too. And the fact that you was like, you don't have to stop cursing. But I was like, I have to stop cursing,
Yeah.
because it was like I was realizing that, like, and I didn't know at the time, hindsight is always 2020, but like I said before, it was just where He was bringing me,
Hmm.
right? And it was like, just in you were all the things that I was lacking.
Hmm. Oh.
And so I was seeing it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of in a way of like, it was beautiful to see it in you, but it's almost like a mirror where
Hmm.
you're getting to see, but like the opposite mirror, right? Where you're able to see, like, where you're falling short,
Yeah.
right? And like I was like, oh snap, I really am cursing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you like once I say this, when you make that change, well, that's a whole podcast episode on its own. But when
Yeah.
you make that switch, then you start hearing other people.
And you're like, oh
Oh
my
my God.
goodness,
Yeah.
like what? You're not even making sense. Like you're
Yeah.
just cussing for no reason now.
Right.
Like, come
Every
on.
other word is a cuss word. Like
Right.
it's so vulgar. And
Yeah.
yeah. And just when you hear like songs and stuff, things that you used to just sing
Mm-hmm.
along to, you start hearing what they're really saying.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was really listening to that. Was really
Yeah.
acting like that.
I knew all the lyrics to that.
Yeah.
And I was rapping and singing it with passion.
Right.
And it's like, ugh, all the curses and everything like that. It's just
Mhm.
not where God is. You know, it's not. It's,
Speaking so much
yeah,
negativity on your life because the tongue is so powerful.
yeah. So that is another thing too. Is just that person that got once the person that's going to be sent to you on purpose is going to help you become a better person too.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you have anything else that you want to share on
I
that.
think that's about it.
Yeah, I think basically what we're trying to get y'all to understand is that like the patience is going to be required,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the reason why the patience is going to be required is because you just have to fortify your faith in the Lord and know that God is going to come through for you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not just going to give you any raggedy old person,
Yeah.
right? It is very intentional. You may accept any raggedy old person
Yeah.
because I feel like we all have. I've definitely
Oh,
done some settling,
definitely.
right? Especially when you're in that vulnerable state of like you feel like there's a hole or there's a gap in you that you
Mm-hmm.
just need to fill. And a lot of that just has to do with you trying to fill it with the world and seek the world's comfort,
Yeah.
right? Instead of going to God for the cure. Because God, all those holes and everything like that we experience, or that isolation and just feeling loneliness, is just because we're not seeking God's presence.
Yeah.
Because once you start seeking God's presence, you feel filled.
Yeah.
Right? You feel the presence of the Lord and you say, oh, the presence of the Lord is here. And it's really there, right? You can feel him in the atmosphere and it's it's so true. And it's just an amazing thing once you allow God to be the love of your life. If you seek God first, the person will come.
Yeah.
But we appreciate y'all being a part of this and taking y'all time out to listen to this. We appreciate every viewer, watcher, and listener wherever podcasts are streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so, other than that, we'll see y'all on the next podcast. Peace.
Peace.